I had been with Callum Hayes for 7 years, 7 birthdays, 7 winters, 7 times I swallowed the word marriage like a pill I was never allowed to taste. He never once brought it up. Then my long-lost sister came home, and suddenly he learned how to plan surprises, how to book ballrooms, how to post couple photos like devotion was a language he'd always known. He just never spoke it to me. He didn't even break up with me either. That was the cruelest part. Callum kept me parked in his life like an old car he refused to sell. Useful when it rained, invisible when the sun came out. He was convinced I'd wait, that I'd always be there, quiet, loyal, predictable, ready for him to come back after he finished chasing something shinier. For Serena Vale's birthday, he threw her a lavish party and showed up as her boyfriend. And that was the moment something inside me went beautifully, irreversibly still. Instead of crying, I went home and burned the last threads, connecting me to him, old photos, handwritten notes, a cheap silver promise ring he'd once pressed into my palm after a fight. Like jewellery could replace accountability. The flames didn't roar. They didn't need to. The smoke curled up calmly, almost relieved, like it had waited years to be released. Then I booked a one-way ticket. When I was boarding, my phone buzzed. Callum, Serena's party is about to start. Everyone's waiting for you. Stop making a scene. I smiled at the screen, not because it was funny, because it was familiar. The entitlement, the assumption, the certainty that I existed to be summoned. I didn't reply. I blocked him on everything. Then I stepped onto the plane like stepping out of a cage. He had no idea that a week ago I'd already accepted my childhood friend Noah Reed's proposal. We were getting engaged the moment I landed. I held my phone up to the airport bathroom mirror and stared at my reflection. Hollow cheeks, lips drained of colour, eyes too big for my face. I looked like a person who'd been surviving on apologies and leftovers. Noah, I said softly, voice steady, even if my hands weren't. I accept. On the other end, his inhale sounded like the first breath after drowning. Elara, you're serious? You'll marry me? Yes, I whispered. I'm serious. His laughter broke, warm and disbelieving. I've been waiting since the day I met you. For the first time in years, my reflection almost looked like it remembered how to live. Give me 1 week, I told him. I need to finish something here. I'll wait, Noah said. I've waited this long. 1 more week is nothing. I hung up, and my bedroom door slammed open so hard it rattled the frame. My mother, Meredith Moore, stood there, with that practiced impatience she reserved for me. Behind her, Serena hovered like a shadow dressed in innocence. Elara, my mother snapped. Your sister's birthday is in a week. Where are the gowns and jewellery I bought for you? Let Serena look and pick something. Serena's eyes met mine, bright, victorious, then instantly softened into fake tears when my mother glanced at her. Oh, Mum, it's really not necessary, Serena murmured. The dresses you bought are fine, even if they're not as high-end as my sister's. My mother sighed, already sold. You are both my children. Whatever your sister has, you should have too. Then she turned to me, displeasure sharpening her voice. Your sister suffered out there before she came back. You need to take better care of her. I expected anger. I expected the old pain. Instead, I felt nothing. Like disappointment had finally hollowed me out so completely there was no space left for hope to die again. Fine, I said, smiling. Take whatever you want. My mother's expression brightened immediately, pleased with my obedience. That's my sensible girl. I'll order you even more. Beautiful things later. Later, always later. The promise she used like perfume, so no one could smell how rotten the favoritism was underneath. When she left, I led Serena into my walk-in closet. The moment the door shut, her sweetness dropped like a curtain. You're furious, aren't you? She hissed, voice low and gleeful. I took your mother. I took your boyfriend. Now I'm taking your dresses too. I turned to leave. Serena stepped in front of me, glanced toward the hallway, and then, like she'd rehearsed it, she threw herself backward with a sharp cry, hitting the doorframe hard enough to make my stomach flip. "Why would you do that?" she sobbed, clutching her head. "Sister, why?" Callum appeared at my doorway, as if summoned by her tears. He rushed to her, scooped her up, and looked at me like I was something ugly he'd finally decided to name. "Elara," he said, voice turning to ice. "Stop bullying Serena. She's your sister." I stared at him, 7 years collapsing into a single bitter second. "Callum," I asked quietly, "after all this time, do you even know who I am?" His expression flickered, uncertainty, almost guilt. Serena's fingers tightened around his sleeve. "Jules, don't be mad at her," she whispered. "She's just jealous. I'm used to it." And just like that, the doubt vanished. Callum's gaze hardened. "You changed the moment she came back," he said. "Jealousy made you unrecognizable. The last shred of affection in me wore away so cleanly it didn't even hurt." That night, I opened an airline website and booked my flight. Then my phone lit up again, this time in a group chat full of our mutual friends. "Callum, suddenly, I want to get married." The chat exploded. Congratulations, teasing, cheers. Then he dropped an invitation. Host, Serena Vale's boyfriend, Callum Hayes. And his next message froze the whole group dead. "Callum, the reason I want to get married is because of Serena. She feels like home, a feeling Elara never gave me." I typed one sentence, slow and calm. "Congratulations on finding your home, Mr. Hayes. I wish you both exactly what you deserve." Then I left the group, packed my suitcase, and unlocked the drawer I'd never let anyone touch. Inside was my grandmother's worn recipe book, yellowed pages, careful handwriting, the only inheritance that ever felt like love. I placed it gently at the bottom of my suitcase. This time, I was choosing my grandmother's legacy over a man who only valued me when I was useful. The next morning, I was preparing to take Marley, my grandmother's little dog, to get his transport papers. Then I heard a thin, broken whimper outside, a woman's voice, sharp with disgust. "You worthless mutt!" Serena cursed. "Bark again. I dare you." My blood went cold. I ran to the garden and saw Marley collapsed on the grass, trembling, Serena looming above him with a smile that didn't belong on any human face. In that instant, my world narrowed to one truth. They didn't just want what I had. They wanted to destroy what I loved, so there'd be nothing left of me to stand back up. I lunged forward, scooped Marley into my arms, and ran, and behind me, Serena's cry rose on cue, sweet as poison. "Mom! Callum! She's hurting him! She's hurting me!" Footsteps thundered, voices sharpened, hands reached for my arms, and I realized, with a terrifying clarity, that in this house, in this love, in this entire life, I had never been the one they planned to believe. I stroked Marley's head with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. My fingertips came away warm and wet, and the warmth didn't feel like life. It felt like a door closing. "Marley," I whispered over and over, like the name itself could stitch him back together. "Hey, hey, baby, look at me." With an effort so painful it looked like courage, he turned his head. His tongue touched my palm once, slow, faint, deliberate. I understood him. It wasn't just a lick. It was a goodbye. It was his way of saying, "Don't cry, don't break, not for me." And then his head went slack. The world didn't explode, it froze. All the blood in my body turned to ice so fast I thought I might crack. My chest hollowed out like something had been ripped from it with bare hands. Marley had been my grandmother's last heartbeat in this house. He was the small, stubborn joy that always found me, even when I tried to disappear. He slept by my feet. He followed my shadow. He learned to sit and shake just to make me laugh on days I couldn't even lift my eyes. And now, the sun was gone. Tears burst out of me anyway, hot and humiliating against the cold that was spreading through my bones. I pressed my face into Marley's fur like I could borrow warmth from him one last time. A harsh laugh cut through the garden. Callum. "You're really something, Alara." His voice was sharp with disgust. "You're the one who killed him. Who are you performing this fake crying for? It's revolting." Beside him, Serena clung to his arm like a delicate ornament, her voice sugar-thin. "Callum, it's my fault." She dabbed at her eyes as if she were grieving. "You used your name as my boyfriend to invite everyone to my birthday party. Of course my sister would be angry. If I hadn't gone with you yesterday, she could have taken her anger out on me, and Marley would still be fine." She cried so prettily it almost looked real. Something in me snapped. Clean, bright, final. I stood up so fast my knees nearly buckled. I walked straight to Serena. And before she could even widen those innocent eyes, my hand swung. The slap landed with a sharp crack that echoed like a judge's gavel. Serena's head snapped to the side. Her cheek bloomed red instantly. The perfect imprint of my fingers stamped across her skin like a signature. It wasn't enough. Not even close. What was a sting compared to what Marley had suffered? I lifted my hand again. Callum grabbed my wrist, his grip iron, his face darkening with fury, as if I'd shattered his favourite toy. "Enough!" he barked. Then another hand struck me, hard, open-palmed, full of hate. My mother. Meredith's slap snapped my head sideways. My cheek flared with heat, but I barely felt it. Pain was distant. It was Marley's still body at my feet that held all the gravity in the world. "Alara Moore!" my mother choked out, actually crying now, her voice breaking at the end. "Haven't you caused enough trouble? Why have you become like this?" I turned my face back slowly and looked at her, looked right through her. The usual light in my eyes, whatever hope had once lived there, was gone. "I haven't changed," I said, each word flat and quiet, as if spoken from the bottom of a well. "I'm not causing trouble, it's you. You don't believe me." My throat tightened, and for a split second, the child in me rose up, begging, bargaining, bleeding. "Why won't you believe me?" For one heartbeat, my mother froze. Then Serena let out a small, trembling cry, pressing her hand to her cheek like a wounded saint, and Meredith's attention snapped back to her as if I'd never spoken. Callum and my mother guided Serena inside, voices softening instantly, hands careful, protective, like she was the one who'd just lost something sacred. A breeze swept through the garden and stung my slapped cheek, but mostly I just felt cold, a deep, marrow-level cold that made my teeth click. I stared at the ground, at the spot where Serena had fallen, and there it was, half hidden under leaves, a high-heeled shoe. The toe peeked out like a guilty grin, one of the couture pairs my mother had bought for me, the ones I'd never worn because they didn't fit my taste, my feet, my life, the ones I'd packed up yesterday. For Serena. My gaze stayed fixed, and something sharp formed. Behind my ribs. Not rage this time, not grief, clarity. If my mother hadn't already decided I was the villain, if she'd just looked, she would have seen the truth sitting there in plain sight, waiting to be picked up. I walked over slowly, as if moving too fast might wake Marley's body and make this real again. I bent down, picked up the shoe by the heel, and placed it into an empty cardboard box near the garden shed. Careful, controlled, like collecting evidence at the scene of a crime. Everything Serena had done before, stealing attention, stealing affection, stealing the man I wasted 7 years on, I could have let it go. I could have walked away and never looked back. But this time, she killed Marley. This time, She crossed a line that didn't belong to family drama. It belonged to justice, and something else didn't fit. Serena had gone missing when she was 4. I was 9. I still remembered her back then, how she used to crouch and feed stray cats behind the school, how she cried when she saw a puppy with a limp. She'd been soft-hearted, gentle. People change, yes, but do they change that completely? Or was the person standing in my home wearing my sister's name, not the sister I remembered at all? That night, I placed Marley in his favourite bed beside his toys and treats. His body had begun to stiffen, my nose burned, tears fell onto his fur in slow, helpless drops. Every time I'd cried before, he'd licked my cheeks clean. He'd begged, rolled over, performed his little tricks like happiness was a job, and he took it seriously, so I forced a smile through shaking lips and whispered, "I know, baby. I'll be okay." Then I did what grief made necessary. I had him cremated. I chose a beautiful urn, simple, dignified, worthy of the love he'd carried. I paid a specialist lab an obscene amount of money for expedited testing on the shoe, and I hired a private investigator in the capital, the kind with no morals about comfort and no patience for lies. When I came home, I placed Marley's ashes at the bottom of my suitcase, right beside my grandmother's recipe book. Legacy and loss, 2 weights that would keep me from ever being foolish again. In the middle of the night, someone started pounding on my door like they were trying to break my life open one more time. I barely sat up before the door was kicked in. My mother stormed inside, eyes wild, and slapped me again without a word. "Alara," she screamed, "will you ever stop? Do you realise what you're doing could kill Serena? You killed Marley today. You hurt her, and now you're trying to kill her outright." Behind her, Serena's weak voice floated out, soft and triumphant. "Mom, I'm sure my sister didn't mean it. I took my medicine. I'm not in danger anymore." "She did it on purpose," my mother said, absolute and furious. "Who sprinkles peanut powder on clothes for no reason? She knows you have a severe peanut allergy." She planned it. Peanut powder. I didn't even blink, because in that instant, I understood the shape of the trap. The kind that didn't just ruin reputations, it ended lives. My mother's face twisted with disgust as she looked at me. "Tomorrow morning, you move out. If you stay in this house, Serena will die by your hands sooner or later." Serena peeked from behind her shoulder, and where my mother couldn't see, she gave me a smile. Bright, victorious, fearless. And for the first time, my voice came out calm. "Okay," I said. Not because I was surrendering, because I was done begging for love from people who only knew how to weaponize it. And because now I wasn't leaving as a victim. I was leaving as someone who had finally decided to hunt the truth. It was already past 3. In the quiet corner of the yacht's lounge, Callum Hayes checked his phone for the 4th time in a single minute, like staring harder might summon a reply out of thin air. The screen stayed stubbornly blank. No messages, no typing bubble, no read receipts, nothing. His jaw tightened, a muscle jumped near his temple. He told himself he was calm, that he didn't care, that this silence was just another one of Alara's little tantrums. But his fingers kept unlocking the phone, swiping, refreshing, and locking it again like a man trapped in a loop. For years, Alara had replied to every message. Every one, even his laziest 2-word commands. Even the late-night, come-over texts sent like a dog whistle. Even the careless, "Where are you?" that never came with, "Are you okay?" There had never been a time, never, when his message was the last one in their chat. And on the rare days it happened, it wasn't because she wanted to win, it was because she was crying too hard to type. Then she would come back first anyway. She always did, with a softened tone, with an apology she didn't owe, with a meal packed neatly into a thermal container like love, could be portioned and delivered. Callum's pride had fed on that pattern until it became his religion. If he didn't reply, she would. If he disappeared, she would chase. If he hurt her, she would fix him. That was how their world worked. So today, he'd done what he considered humbling himself. He'd messaged first. He'd even softened his words. He'd played the boyfriend of the year for Serena Vale in public and expected Alara to do what she always did. Crack, rage, cry, beg, anything that proved she still belonged to him, because that was the point, wasn't it? Provocation, a leash tug, a test of ownership. They weren't married. He could do whatever he wanted. A man like him having women around him was normal, wasn't it? And Alara should have learned, after 7 years, to be more magnanimous, less petty, less dramatic, more useful. His stomach gave a dull, twisting ache, like it was laughing at his logic from the inside. Callum pressed his palm against his abdomen and breathed through it, irritated all over again that his own body dared to betray him on an important day. He had arranged the entire banquet for Serena's birthday. He'd invited the media. He'd curated the guest list. He'd chosen the wine. He'd even made sure the floral arrangement matched Serena's dress. And without thinking, without even noticing he'd done it, he'd left the role of head chef open for Alara. It was instinct, really. The same instinct that reached for a familiar medicine cabinet in the dark. The same instinct that assumed the house would always be warm because Alara was still somewhere inside it. Time crawled toward 4. The staff hovered like nervous birds. No one started prepping in earnest. Everyone was waiting for a chef who wasn't coming, and no one dared say it out loud. Finally, Serena couldn't hold it in anymore. She approached in a pale dress that made her look delicate under the yacht's lights, sat beside Callum, and tugged gently at his sleeve. "Callum," she asked softly, eyes wide and pleading, "has the chef you hired not arrived yet?" Her voice used to charm him. Tonight, it sounded like a mosquito too close to his ear. Still, he forced a smile. He tapped her nose lightly the way a man taps a child's forehead. Absent, performative. "Don't worry," he said. "I'll call him now. Your dinner won't be delayed." Serena leaned into him with a tiny, playful gesture, curling her fingers like paws. "Meow!" Callum squeezed her hand without warmth, eyes already on his phone. With enough money, he reminded himself, you could buy anything, any chef, any dish, any experience. It didn't have to be Alara. He made one call. By 5, a 5-star hotel chef had been poached with a number large enough to silence questions. The kitchen buzzed. The schedule snapped back into place. The banquet began on time. The dishes came out perfect, colourful, fragrant, plated like art. Guests praised the cuisine with bright smiles and raised glasses. Cameras flashed. Laughter floated across the deck. Only a few people, those who had eaten Alara's food for years, felt the missing piece. The food was delicious, yes, but it didn't have comfort. It didn't have that strange, impossible flavour that made you feel like someone had noticed you without being asked. No one said anything, of course. Nobody wanted to offend the host, so they praised loudly and swallowed the emptiness quietly. Callum took a few bites. The ache in his stomach sharpened into a claw. His brow furrowed. Serena didn't notice. She kept placing food on his plate, chattering sweetly, acting like she was feeding him affection when she was really just feeding him noise. Alara would have noticed instantly. Alara would have reached into her bag, pulled out the thermos she always carried, and poured him that pale medicinal soup that settled his stomach like a hand smoothing wrinkled fabric. She would have frowned gently and said, "Stop drinking. Your body can't keep paying for your ego." She would have been right. The pain pulsed harder. Callum set down his chopsticks, muttered an excuse, and walked into a quiet lounge area. He checked his phone again. Nearly 7. Still nothing. A fresh wave of irritation surged up his throat. thick and hot. He ignored the cramps, ignored the humiliation of needing someone, and typed the first thing that came into his mind, something sharp enough to cut through silence. "Let's get back together." He hit send, and for the first time in 7 years, his message didn't land in her world. A red exclamation mark flashed on the screen like a siren. Callum stared, once, twice. Then his fingers moved fast, violent with disbelief. He sent another message, and another, and another. Red exclamation marks, all of them. His pulse kicked hard. He tried calling. The call failed, blocked, his chest filled with rage so dense it felt like pressure, under his ribs. How dare she? How dare Ilara? Quiet, loyal, easy Ilara. Block him. Wasn't she afraid he would leave her for good? The pain in his stomach twisted with the anger, and suddenly he was furious at that too, furious at the body that had grown dependent on her care like a spoiled child. Fine, fine, let her have her little rebellion. He straightened, teeth clenched, eyes cold with the satisfaction of someone who believed the ending was already written. She would come back, everyone knew it. Ilara loved him so much she couldn't survive without him. She would cry, she would beg, she would show up like she always did, bearing soup, bearing forgiveness, bearing herself. Sooner or later, that belief warmed him better than any medicine. On the other side of the city, however, Ilara was stepping off a plane into a new life, one where she didn't have to earn love by bleeding for it. She didn't call Noah Reed right away, not because she didn't want him, because after 7 years of being treated like a convenience, she didn't trust her own choices yet. Noah's proposal had sounded half teasing, half brave, the way boys make promises when they're trying to protect the girl they've always wanted. 10 years had passed. People changed, hearts changed. Maybe he'd change his mind once the adrenaline cooled. So she did what she always did when her emotions were loud. She chose control. She went to see her university best friend, Beatrice Lane, who lived in the city and had already planned a distraction with the precision of someone who loved Ilara without needing to own her. "Our team just finished a huge project," Bea said, looping her arm through Ilara's. "The CEO gave us permission for a yacht night. Friends and family can come. Tonight. Come with me." A yacht, the sea, darkness, and lights that flickered like fireflies. Ilara agreed, thinking of networking, thinking of business, thinking of anything that wasn't. Callum Hayes. When they arrived, the beach was undeveloped, the night unlit, yet the yacht ahead glittered with tiny lights that blinked on and off in the dark like a dream trying to breathe. Bea leaned close, excited. "Our CEO is insanely handsome. They say the yacht is named after the person he loves most. He treasures it." Inside, a long table glowed under warm lights. People laughed, glasses clinked. Bea pulled Ilara toward one of the last empty seats. An extra plate was already set beside it. Bea frowned, whispering, "Why is there an extra serving?" Before anyone could answer, the door opened and the room subtly changed, as if the air had been trained to make space for one person. A man stepped in wearing a dark grey suit, casual but devastatingly precise. Noah Reed, not the teasing boy from her childhood. A grown man with calm power in his posture, with eyes that carried years like they were secrets. He walked in under ceiling lights that twinkled like stars, and then he looked straight at Ilara, serious, steady, undone. He pulled out the chair beside her, sat down, and in a voice warm enough to shake her composure, he said to the room, "Welcome, everyone, to the Ilara." Ilara's heart slammed against her ribs because she realized all at once some people didn't need to be chased for years to learn how to choose you. Some people had been choosing you quietly the whole time. Noah's eyes were still wet, but his voice had steadied, low, careful, like he was holding something fragile between his palms. "If you don't want to marry me right now, he said. I won't force you. I can wait, as long as it takes. He took a slow breath, then added, almost painfully honest, We're not married yet, and I haven't even given you a proper proposal. You have the right to change your mind at any time. He tried to smile, but it came out bitter, a curve that didn't reach his eyes. You're free, Alara, even if you end up choosing someone else, not me. I can accept it. The deck lights flickered above us. The sea breathed in the dark. And his words, those words, hit me like warmth after a long fever. Noah Reid used to hate speeches. He used to roll his eyes at romance in movies, call it cheesy, say, if I like someone, I'll just show it. I won't talk like a poet. So why did he sound like this now? Why did he sound like someone who had been carrying love for years, quietly, without permission? It's just... Noah's throat worked, and his gaze softened in a way that made my ribs ache. Callum Hayes is too much of a playboy. If you stay with him, you won't be happy. And His voice dropped. I don't want the person I love most to end up unhappy. I stared at him, stunned. The phrase, the person I love most, echoed through my chest like a bell. I didn't know when I had become that to him. I didn't know when he had decided I mattered enough to be gentle, enough to step back, enough to lose with grace. I only knew that my body, my tired heart, my bruised pride, my grief that still smelled like Marley's fur, recognized sincerity like a starving person recognizes food. I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him. Noah went rigid, like he'd been shocked. His hands hovered in mid-air, unsure where to land, as if he was afraid to touch me wrong and wake me up from a dream. I leaned close to his ear and whispered, I'm not going to change my mind. His breath hitched. Then, because the words deserved to be spoken plainly, I pulled back and looked him right in the eyes. Noah Reid, I said softly, let's get married. For a second he didn't move, like he didn't trust the world to give him anything good without snatching it back. So I reached up, cupped his face in my hands, and pressed my lips to his, a gentle kiss at first. Simple, certain. Noah froze. Then something broke loose in him. He kissed me back, turning from hesitant to hungry in a single heartbeat, like he'd been holding his breath for years and finally remembered how to breathe. The sea rocked the yacht, the lights blinked like fireflies, and I realized this wasn't an ending, this was a beginning. Across the city, Callum Hayes was falling apart in a way he couldn't explain. His stomach ached constantly now, an old pain, familiar but sharper without Alara's careful hands and warm soups. His face had grown hollow, eyes rimmed red from too many sleepless nights and too much liquor. He invited friends over to drink as if noise could drown out the silence she'd left behind. But nothing filled it. Not the laughter, not the clinking glasses, not Serena's cloying sweetness. In fact, the more Serena tried, the more Callum felt irritated, like her softness had become a costume he suddenly noticed was stitched with cheap thread. She laughed too brightly. She touched him too often. She asked, "Are you okay?" in a way that sounded like she was auditioning for the role of caring girlfriend. And the most infuriating part, he began to miss Ilara's nagging, the thing he used to call annoying, the thing he used to roll his eyes at, the quiet supervision that had once felt like control but now revealed itself as devotion. He missed how she could read him with one glance, even the smallest shift in his expression, and Ilara would know. His stomach was acting up, his temper was rising, his pride was bruised. She would adjust the food, hide the spice, pull him back from another drink, press warm water into his palm like she was saving him from himself. Now, even with his mother sitting in the same room, no one noticed unless he made it obvious. And he refused to make it obvious, because if he admitted he needed Ilara, he would have to admit he'd driven her away. He remembered the night his friend had called her. He could have stopped it. He could have said, "Don't." He could have had pride, but something strange had possessed him. He'd let the call go through, and he'd sat close enough to hear her voice. He had wanted to hear her say his name. Instead, he heard her reject him like he didn't exist. And the panic that rose in his chest that night, he still didn't have a name for it. He told himself it was temporary. 9 years was too long. A woman's love didn't vanish like that. Ilara's devotion was carved into her bones. She would come back. She had to. Callum, stop drinking. His mother, Diane Hayes, pressed a hand down on his glass, frowning. The office is drowning in work. Your friends are worried. Are you really going to keep destroying your body? Then her tone softened, like she was offering a compromise. If you truly want to be with Miss Vale, we won't stop you. A friend chimed in. We already called Serena. She's on her way. Your mum agreed. At the sound of Serena's name, Callum's stomach turned, not with pain this time, but disgust. He staggered to his feet, bloodshot eyes blazing. Who told you to call her? Did I say I wanted her here? His friend blinked. She's your girlfriend. If we don't call her to take care of you, who should we call? Callum laughed, cold, sharp. When did she become my girlfriend? Don't you all know who I actually want here? The room went quiet. His mother's face hardened. She's the girlfriend you acknowledged in front of the media, Diane said icily. The one you made a public confession to. Was that all a joke? Voices piled on from the couch. Friends, half drunk, half concerned. Yeah, you posted so much, everyone knows. You even said in the group chat she was the one you wanted to marry. Ava, Ilara, wished you an early heir. We thought you and Serena were getting engaged. Callum ran both hands through his hair like he was trying to rip the past out by the roots. It was my fault, he muttered hoarsely. I went too far. I was just trying to spite Ilara, force her to give in. She was always sensible before. She'd get angry, then come back. Why hasn't she come back this time? Only then did his mother finally remember who Ilara was, like a name pulled from an old drawer. Oh, that girl, Diane said, almost thoughtful. Wonderful cook, gentle, virtuous, knows her place. She is indeed a good choice. She reached for her phone. I'll call her myself. The call didn't go through. She tried again. Same result. His friends tried too. Same result. Blocked. The air chilled. Even the drunkest of them sobered. Callum sank onto the sofa, staring at nothing. His mother stood, eyes hard with judgment. This is your mess. You solve it. I'll have your brother handle the company for now. She left. Callum looked at his friend like a drowning man grabbing at a lie. She's just angry, right? He asked, voice thin. She'll come back to me, right? His friend hesitated, then spoke carefully. My cousin saw Ilara at the pet crematorium, holding Marley's body. Callum's breath stopped. And a friend works at a forensics lab, the friend continued. Ilara sent in a pair of high heels for testing, paid for an expedited report. It's been ready for days. She never picked it up. The room tilted. Callum remembered that morning. Ilara clutching Marley, blood on her sleeves, her face shattered with desperation, and he remembered himself, blocking her path, accusing her, stopping her like she was the monster. What if she wasn't? He didn't dare finish the thought, because if she had been innocent, then he had done something unforgivable. He had watched her heart break and chose the wrong person anyway. Callum swallowed hard, and for the first time in years, the truth didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a verdict. He stood up with sudden, frantic resolve, took the stomach medicine from the table, swallowed it with warm water, like a man trying to become worthy in one gulp, washed his face, combed his hair, changed into the outfit Ilara used to like. Then he opened the door and ran straight into Serena. She wore that same pitiful, watery-eyed expression that once triggered his protective instinct. She reached up, fingers pressing his temples. "Callum," she murmured, "you drank so much. Your stomach will hurt. Your head will ache. I learned how to massage for you." Callum slapped her hand away. "Not necessary." Serena's smile trembled. Then she recovered, sweeter, softer, more flattering. "I got a table at that lamb hot pot place on the west side. The broth is nourishing. Let's go together." Callum froze, because Ilara's stomach was sensitive to cold, and she loved lamb hot pot. Loved it so much she used to swallow saliva when they passed those restaurants. And he couldn't eat it. His stomach was sensitive, and she had always accommodated him. Always. He stared at Serena as if seeing her for the first time. "Do you really like lamb hot pot?" he asked, voice low, strange, as if he were looking through her at someone else. Serena nodded, smile stiff. "Yes, I love it." She lifted her chin, wrapped her arms around his neck, and purred. "I love dipping lamb slices in a thick layer of sesame sauce. It tastes divine." Then she tapped her lips. "Want to try?" Callum's expression changed. Not jealousy, not annoyance, recognition. Slow, brutal, unavoidable. He shoved her away hard enough to make her stumble. "When you eat hot pot," he asked, voice calm in a way that promised violence, "do you often eat sesame sauce?" Serena blinked, confused. "Yes." "What's wrong?" Callum's eyes went dead. "Serena Vale," he said, each word heavy. "Didn't you tell me you have a severe peanut allergy?" Serena's throat bobbed. "Yes." Callum laughed once, short, self-loathing. "Sesame sauce is made with peanut paste. How does someone with a severe peanut allergy eat it regularly without any reaction?" Serena's face drained white, and in the space of one breath, Callum finally understood. He hadn't been protecting a victim. He'd been worshipping a lie, and he had crushed the one person who would have died to save him, simply because he never bothered to believe she deserved the benefit of the truth. Lucy didn't stop at stealing a name. Once she realised the truth that the little girl sold into her household years ago was, by blood, the second daughter of the Quinn family, her greed turned surgical. She didn't just want an upgrade. She wanted a full replacement. She started with hair, a single lock cut from the real Vicky Moore while the girl slept. Soft, dark strands sealed like a key inside a plastic bag. DNA wasn't loyalty. DNA was a door, and Lucy had just stolen the handle. Then she moved to poison, rat poison crushed into food, mixed carefully, measured like a recipe, one by one. Lucy murdered her parents, the brother who might have talked, and the real Vicky, who had already been locked in their cellar like a secret she didn't deserve to breathe. When the house went quiet, Lucy made it quieter. She dismembered the bodies with a brutality that didn't belong to human hands, buried them in the mountains behind the property, and returned to her kitchen sink to wash blood away like it was just another stain. Finally, with a smile practiced in the mirror, she sold the family home and land under her father's name, using the excuse that the whole family was moving to the city. The money bought her a new face. Plastic surgery in small, careful stages. Nose, jaw, eyes. A mouth shaped to look softer, more innocent. A face that could be recognised, adored, and, most importantly, believed. Then she returned, not as Lucy Miller, but as Vicky Moore. With the real Vicky's hair as her weapon, she passed the DNA test and was welcomed into the Moore family with open arms. The detective Noah hired felt his stomach drop the deeper he dug. By the time fraud turned into missing persons and missing persons turned into probable homicide, he stopped treating it like a private scandal. He reported everything to the police. He handed over evidence, and the case became criminal. At the press conference, Callum Hayes didn't reveal the full horror. Not yet. An active investigation meant there were details even money and influence couldn't publish safely, but Meredith Moore, Ilara's mother, already knew. She knew because the police had exhumed bodies from the mountains. She knew because the DNA test confirmed one of the female corpses belonged to her real daughter, her real Vicky. Meredith broke in a way that wasn't dramatic. It was worse, quiet, raw, bottomless. She cried until her throat tore and her body shook like it was trying to expel guilt through tears. She couldn't believe she had hugged her daughter's murderer. She couldn't believe she had fed that monster at her own table, bought her gifts, defended her, called her sweet girl with pride. And worse, she had turned that monster into a weapon she used against her eldest daughter. She remembered it now, the day Lucy had brought her the lock of hair for the test. Meredith had held it and felt a flicker of unease. The hair had been coarse and yellowed, nothing like Lucy's own sleek, glossy strands. Lucy had laughed, made up a story, said the streets had ruined her hair, said hardship did strange things. Meredith, drunk on relief, high on the joy of finding her daughter, had swallowed the lie like medicine. If she had been careful, if she had taken a strand from Lucy's own head instead, if she had questioned even once, Vicky wouldn't have been buried alone in the mountains for years while her murderer lived the life that should have been hers. Even now, Lucy refused to admit it. At the station, she screamed, sobbed, begged, cycling through every mask like a desperate actress running out of time. "Mom!" she wailed, throwing herself toward Meredith. "I'm your daughter. I'm Vicky Moore. Tell them to let me go." Meredith stared at Lucy's face, 70% similar to Ilara's, sculpted to resemble the daughter she had lost. For a split second, her mind betrayed her with a cruel fantasy. If Vicky were alive, maybe she would look like this. The thought shattered her. The grief wasn't just for Vicky, it was for Ilara too, the daughter she had pushed out the door with her own hands. Behind Meredith, Callum stood stiff and pale, like a man who had suddenly realised the ground he walked on was built from his own lies. Lucy turned on him, wild-eyed. "Callum Hayes, I just had a miscarriage," she shrieked. "It was your baby! You can't do this to me!" Callum didn't flinch, but his voice came out cold, clean, final. "I never touched you," he said. "Not once. Whatever you lost wasn't mine." Lucy's scream became animal. The police dragged her away. Meredith didn't stop them. She couldn't, because now that she knew what Lucy really was, every memory of Vicky in her house felt like a desecration. Callum drove Meredith home in silence. The city lights streaked across the windshield like blurred judgment. When the car finally stopped, they sat there breathing, not speaking, two people crushed under the weight of realizing they had been wrong in the worst possible way. Meredith spoke first, voice broken. "I failed Ilara. And I failed Vicky." Her hands trembled in her lap. Vicky and Ilara were so close before she was taken. If you had fallen for Vicky back then, Ilara would have wished you well. She would never have done any of this. She was always kind. Always. She swallowed, and tears rolled down again. Why didn't I believe her? Not even once. Then she looked at Callum, and her eyes were ruined with regret. That child, she must have been so heartbroken. I'm her mother, her only family, and I didn't believe her. She pressed a fist to her chest, as if trying to hold her heart together. "Do you think Ilara will ever come back?" Callum didn't answer, because he didn't have an answer that wouldn't be another lie. His stomach started to ache again, dull and spreading, like the physical echo of panic. He forced a smile anyway, the way men do when they're trying to keep the world from seeing them collapse. "She will," he said, but the words tasted like ash. "You're her mother." Meredith's laugh cracked into a sob. A mother who heard a few words from a daughter who'd only been back half a month and erased 20 years of her eldest child's life. I denied her kindness. I nailed her to a pillar of shame and called her vicious, jealous, day after day. Her shoulders shook. What right do I have to face her, father and her grandmother? They tried calling Ilara again. New numbers, different phones, borrowed lines. Each time the call ended the moment Ilara heard their voices. Eventually, even that stopped working. It wasn't just blocking anymore, it was distance, boundaries, a locked door that didn't need explaining because Ilara wasn't waiting to be rescued. She had already left the burning house. She had already chosen a different future. And somewhere far from their regret, under a real summer sky, Noah Reed was down on one knee in a field where fireflies gathered naturally, countless flickers rising and falling like breathing light. He didn't joke this time. He didn't hide behind playfulness. With friends and family watching, with his hands steady and his eyes honest, he said, "Ilara Moore, will you marry me?" And when she said yes, the night didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release, like finally stepping out of a story where love had to be proved through suffering and into one where love simply chose to stay. The wedding dress Ethan picked for me had been ordered 6 months ago, long before I even dared to believe I deserved a soft ending. It wasn't the kind of gown that screamed for attention. No dramatic glitter, no heavy embroidery meant to blind the room. It was simple, elegant, clean lines, a quiet sheen like moonlight on water. Understated, but unmistakably luxurious, the kind of beauty that didn't need to beg to be seen. When I looked in the mirror, I almost didn't recognize the woman looking back. My skin glowed, my eyes were bright, my smile opened like a flower finally turning toward the sun. The hollow, exhausted version of me, the one who lived off apology and hope and crumbs, was gone. Even my cheeks looked fuller, like my body had finally stopped bracing for impact. Love, real love, doesn't hollow you out. It puts you back together. Behind me, Ethan, Noah Reed now, in a tailored white suit, stood still, like he was afraid he might startle the moment. His gaze stayed locked on my reflection, with something so tender it made my throat tighten. "My love," he whispered, almost reverently, "you're breathtaking." I turned slightly and smiled at him. "You're handsome too." And it was true. The suit made him look like every ridiculous romance cliché, but his eyes ruined the cliché by making it real. He looked at me as if I wasn't a prize, but a home he'd been searching for his whole life. We smiled at each other, the kind of smile that doesn't perform for anyone. Then he hesitated. "Lara," he said softly, using the nickname only he was allowed to use now. "Callum Hayes is outside. He showed up. Do you want me to let him in?" I didn't even need to think. I shook my head once, calm, final. "Not today. On a day like this, I don't want to see him." Ethan nodded immediately, like my peace was the only command he recognized. "Got it. I'll have security escort him off the property." And just like that, the unpleasant interruption was cut cleanly out of my day, as if someone had snipped a thread that didn't belong in this tapestry. The wedding was minutes away. Ethan had to enter from the other side, so he kissed my forehead and left. The bridal suite swarmed with motion, my best friend B fussing with my veil, the professional bridesmaids I'd hired adjusting the dress with practiced hands. I didn't have many close friends in this city, and I'd learned something over the last year. Money can't buy love, but it can buy competence, and competence gives you room to breathe. When everything was ready, they placed my bouquet into my hands. White flowers, soft green leaves, a scent so clean it felt like starting over. I stood at the door while the wedding march began, my heart thudding so loud I thought the whole venue could hear it. We had rehearsed this. Twice, 3 times. Still, My fingers trembled. I took a slow breath, pushed the door open, and the first thing I saw was Ethan striding toward me from the end of the aisle. He didn't wait for tradition. He didn't wait for anyone's permission. He just came. The officiant chuckled into the microphone. "It seems our groom can't wait." A wave of laughter rolled through the guests, warm and affectionate. Ethan didn't even pretend to be embarrassed. He grinned like a fool, like a boy who'd finally gotten the toy he'd wanted for years and still couldn't believe it was real. He reached me, took my hand, and his palm was steady, grounding. He squeezed once, silently telling me, "I've got you." We walked together to the center. We exchanged vows, rings sliding onto fingers like a promise made visible. The moment the band settled against my skin, Ethan leaned in close, his lips brushing my ear. "I love you," he whispered. "From the first moment I saw you to the last breath I take. And if there's another life after this, I'll find you again. I'll love you properly in every single one." His voice shook. His eyes were wet, the way they get when someone is so happy it overflows. My own vision blurred. I cupped his face, kissed him first. No hesitation, no fear, just certainty. Confetti exploded in a bright, laughing storm. Cheers rose. Someone started chanting, "Kiss again! Kiss again!" Ethan looked at me like he needed permission even now, even after everything. I smiled through tears. "What are you waiting for, husband?" His mouth met mine again, soft, slow, deliberate. A kiss that didn't prove anything. A kiss that simply belonged. For a while after the wedding, life was gentle, the kind of gentle I used to think only existed in stories other people got to live. Then, not long after, news came from the capital. My mother was critically ill. I went back once, not to reopen old wounds, but to close a door. I sat beside her bed, listened to her apologies break apart in her mouth, and, in the end, I forgave her. Not because the past became right, but because carrying it no longer served me. The dead don't come back. Regret doesn't reverse time. Forgiveness was something I gave myself too. After the funeral, Ethan and I returned to the Moore family villa to handle the last of the estate. Staff arrangement, documents, the decision to sell the house that had stopped feeling like home years ago. It was late, the agencies were closed, so we stayed one night and planned to call an agent in the morning. At dawn, Ethan was woken by an emergency call from the company and had to leave immediately. He kissed my temple, promised he'd be back by noon, and drove off. I stayed behind, waiting, and that was when the doorbell rang. When I opened it, the man standing outside was almost unrecognizable. Callum Hayes looked calm, clean-shaven, composed, like he'd finally learned how to wear regret like a suit. "Ilara," he said quietly. "Long time no see." I blinked, once letting the silence stretch. "What do you want?" He gave a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm going abroad soon, taking over the overseas branch. I just wanted to talk. One last time." I should have closed the door. I should have trusted the instinct that had saved me so many times. But grief had softened the edges of my caution, and the villa felt too empty, too quiet, too haunted. So I stood there, and in the next heartbeat, Callum moved. Fast. A handkerchief pressed over my mouth and nose. A sharp, chemical scent flooded my lungs. I fought, twisting, clawing, but my strength melted like wax. The ceiling tilted, the world dimmed, and the last thing I saw before darkness swallowed me was Callum's face, so calm it was terrifying, leaning close as if he were doing something tender. When I woke again, the air vibrated with engine noise. I was strapped into a seat, a private plane. My head pounded, my throat burned. Callum sat beside me, watching like I was something precious he'd finally retrieved. "You're awake," he said gently. I snapped upright, fury turning my blood hot. "Why did you kidnap me?" He frowned, as if I had misunderstood. Not kidnap, he corrected, voice smooth as ice. I'm saving you.